What is going on, golf fans? It's your boy Gsluke here with our round 3 preview for props and betting today. Gonna make sure you're ready for all of your exposure for moving day with a look at the weather report, some pin locations. We'll dive deep, hole by hole, give you a real good look of what they're facing today, and then afterwards some underdog and prize picks exposure that I'm getting to out there for round 3. You might want to consider adding to a few slips of your own. So a lot to go through here. We'll touch on any of the props down in chat you want me to deep dive. So if there's any props that you were looking at, considering adding to a slip or two, and you wanted to hear my thoughts on that out there before lock, just throw it down to the live chat as well. But I see we already got Cosadin down there. What's going on? You're, I believe, over there in Euro, if memory serves me correctly. So not quite a morning stream for you, but I got my coffee over here. It's early for somebody that stays up to 2 a.m. over here on the East Coast. And let's get on after this thing, shall we? So in terms of conditions for round number 2, they were a little bit easier than round 1, which I don't think was what most people were expecting. If we take a look at round 1, played about 1 stroke under par. And yesterday, with higher winds than what we had for Thursday, it played about 0.3 shots easier. So it didn't really affect my process all that much. I actually played a lot of unders on strokes and overs on birdies, and it should have been a good day. It actually played easier than what I expected, but I had guys like Luke Clan, Cam Davis over a few slips. Even a Davis Thompson that shot -1 ended up screwing me. So a little bit of unlucky over there on our exposure for round 2, but the reads were there. Course was actually easier than what we had for round number 1. So when we look at this forecast out there for tomorrow, which I just realized the one tab I forgot to bring up was the weather tab, probably the most important one over here for this live stream. So I'll fix that real quick, make sure we're all on the same page. It looks pretty blustery out there for tomorrow. So if you're joining in the live stream late, I'm going to have you guys go back to this section to go out there and watch it. And just so that I know, it is around the 4-minute mark where we can find this weather talk. Let's go through this. So we have it next to the golf course. Let me actually put it on the golf course down here with the pin. It was up in the hills here before. And what you'll see with all 5 of these forecasts, we're going to bring up all 5 at the same time, is that they're calling for a lot of sustained wind. The lowest forecast here is about 15 miles an hour sustained. And what you don't see on this 5 model screen here are all the wind gusts that you have across these models. So just to give you an idea, this ECM model has 32 miles an hour wind gusts there towards midday. GFS model closer to 25, Icon model closer to 34 miles an hour, and gets especially spicy as the day goes on. It looks like it's going to be pretty nasty out there, but I'll give you the warning that yesterday, it wasn't like it was easy conditions-wise. If you look at the top, you can see the observed wind out there for round 2, and there were moments of calmness. You can see 7 miles an hour at 7 a.m., same thing at 9, 12, and then heck, even at 5, 6 p.m. when they were finishing, it got a little bit calmer. But look at the rest of the day. 19 sustained, 18, 19, 20, 21 miles an hour of sustained wind is pretty much the exact same as what we're getting for tomorrow. So I would actually argue that the scoring average, I think, is going to, at worst, be about the same as what we saw for yesterday, if not slightly better out there for round 3. The reason I say that is the conditions don't look all that much worse. I think they're slightly worse than what we had for rounds 1 and 2, but we have the talent gap going way up after the cut line. A lot of those bottom tier players are completely cut out of the picture. So those outliers that were shooting like +10, +5, +7, etc., you're gonna have a whole lot less of those heading into the weekend. But you also have the fact that you have moving day pin locations. We've got usually some of the most accessible pins of the week out here on a Saturday. So you give them slightly easier pins. Heck, they might even move up a tee box or 2 over here for moving day. Also add in the fact that I don't think conditions are getting all that much worse. And I think that these stat averages from round 2 may actually get a little bit better over there for round 3. So your stroke average, I've got anywhere between 1 and 1.5 under par. If it did get close to 2 strokes under par, though, I wouldn't be completely mind blown. I just want to throw it out there because if the winds end up being a little bit calmer than what they're calling for, a -2 scoring average is well within the books in this kind of field. Birdie average probably going up to at least 3.75 per round. Once again, it wouldn't surprise me if that got to about 4 per round, though. Your bogey average likely going to go down a little bit. I don't think this one's going to change as much as some of the other categories, but something around 2.25 per round is something that I'm about expecting for tomorrow. If we go down to fairways hit, I think that'll be pretty consistent. And then your green regulation average, this is the one that's a little bit tougher to nail down. Moving day pins should help out the field when it comes to hitting greens, but the slightly windier conditions isn't something that we can ignore. Just like the stroke average, though, birdie average, bogey average, I actually have getting slightly better for today, I should say. I think the green average might go up as well. And I know it's going to be harder to hit greens conditions-wise because of those winds, but you've got higher quality players that are making the weekends. We don't have those guys that were hitting like half their greens and shooting plus 10 to bring down this GIR average. So it was 12.93 over there for round 2. I think round 3, it might even be 13 plus, which is going to be especially helpful when we get to a prize picks later on, because they have a bunch of guys up here at 12.5 greens that I don't necessarily agree with. Outside of that, I just want to look through some pin locations before we truly dive on in. We'll be looking at shots gained metrics over here on Bet the Number, as we always do, trying to find guys that are hitting the ball the best if we're going to take unders and strokes and overs on birdies. But before we do so, we need to get an idea for what these moving day pins look like, because we can make all the assumptions we want about the setup for today. But if we go through the pins, we actually take a look at what the slopes look like, we can get a good picture for what it's going to play like for round 3. So let's do that. We've got the pin sheet up here. I've also got shot tracker that I can add on here as well. And we're going to go hole by hole and show you the kind of shots that they're facing. So if you got your coffee, sit back, put your feet up, whatever you guys are doing in the morning. Maybe you've got some errands you're running around town. That's usually what I was doing over here on a Saturday, Sunday before I started this golf stuff. But let's see what we're doing. What's up, Michael? Thank you for the fire content. Thank you for the kind words. And how do I feel about 4 earlier starters and Fishburne to bring it home? So yeah, you're more so talking showdown, I think, with that kind of comment. I like the earlier starters. Fishburne is playing pretty well, so I don't know if I can talk you off of him, but the earlier starters, I think there could be something to that. If there's going to be any sort of advantage weather-wise, the first few groups out would be the ones to get it. I don't think that there's really going to be an edge, if I'm going to be frank with you. I think that it's maybe getting a little bit too cute to play all those early starters, but I don't want to say that it's a terrible idea, because what if the winds really do kick up in the afternoon? A few of those models we were looking at had the wind gusts getting to 35 miles an hour a little bit later in the day. So those early starters, they're probably still playing in a lot of that wind, but maybe they get a little bit of a better draw. So I kind of like that. And hey, if Fishburne's your guy up top, your piece of chalk you're playing, then hey, that's your guy. That's why this is the best golf content on YouTube. 5 minutes in and you learn some really interesting takes. There you go, Cosidin. And that's my goal, right? I've been doing this a long time with the stats and whatnot. We go through some plays together that you guys can choose to tail or not. But I more so just want to make you guys better. So, hey, any questions you got, feel free to throw it down in chat. I've got you guys. And, dude, that's my main goal. So, hey, if I taught you a few things already, that's a success for today's live stream. What's going on, Kep? Yo, Luke, glad to finally catch you live. Yeah, it's good to give the morning crew a little bit of love here. I've been doing these late night live streams, and I was supposed to do this stream at like 1:30 a.m., and then, I was cooked, dude. I was absolutely exhausted by 1:30 a.m. So I said, you know what? We'll get a sleep and we'll wake up and give the morning crew some love. So glad to have you in here. Finally, an earlier stream. The late streams are tough for me. I got to say, I'm a late owl, but dude, when it gets past 12, my mental acuity, my mental sharpness drops off like a rock. I mean, that's just natural. So yeah, I like doing these morning streams. Of course, do I like Fishburne for an under pars or better? So that's an interesting one. So I was looking at his odds over here on Caesars last night. I just wanted to look at all the guys. They had it 15.5 pars or better because they have Fishburne up there. Then they also have guys like Alex Smalley, who, not trying to be disrespectful, but he's an average to below average player. And the bogey average, if it was a little bit higher than what it was for yesterday, I would probably be taking those kind of unders. Just to look at the odds, though, to show you what you're looking for in Fishburne, you can see he's actually juiced under his 2.5 bogey line. So I would probably stay away from that. I think there's better spots to go out there and fade Fishburne, namely maybe even his like birdie line, or maybe like a birdie or better matchup that you could do out there with Fishburne. Might be the better way to go about it. He's got the pressure of having the lead after 2 rounds. I think that's going to ramp up if he's towards the lead heading into Sunday. But yeah, you can look at some fades. Your fave plays are Eric Cole 4.5 and Henley 4.5 birdies if they can keep it going. Yeah, Eric Cole, I believe, is at 4 over here on Prize Picks. Might be at the same on Underdog as well. So I don't know if you have access to those kind of sites, but with the push equity at 4, I'm right there with you. I mean, he's been hitting the ball beautifully, actually has not made a lot of putts. If you take a look at the stats for Eric Cole from round number 2, you'll see that, very sustainable with his shots gained approach. But if you look at his putting, he gained 1.7 strokes over the first 2 rounds. Round number 1, he gained all of those strokes. You can see he was still solid with the approach playing off the tee. He gained 1.8 strokes putting. Round 2, he lost out there with his putting, but you can see at the 2 ball striking categories, he went out there and gained about 2.5 strokes. So yeah, dude, Eric Cole, at least stat-wise, I'm a huge fan of his. He's from the same town as I am down here in Florida. So, a little bit of bias when it comes to Eric Cole, but dude, he's a baller. You're always on your way to work or working for the main slate stream. So yeah, better time for you out here. Glad to have you, dude. What's going on? Morning. Thank you for the tip on Sapin. You got him in both your full lineups. Yeah, I wish I had more myself, the running man, but I'm glad that you were able to take advantage. I don't have them in any 6 of 6s. My, duds this week, just for Svensson. I had a lot of guys that were like 6K that are up there in the top 20 right now. I mean, Ben Coles is like -6. Like that's a pretty good play this week. But my guys up top absolutely sucked this week. I mean, Poston missed the cut. I played Siwoo. I played who else was that slappy up top that missed the cut? There was a bunch of them. Honestly, I've tried to repress it from my mind at this point. But yeah, dude, I'm glad that you're at least taking advantage of that, right? Because hey, my studs played like duds this week. Let's put it that way. Bobby Mack in the wind, Hideki and Sahith lurking. Good luck with the Steelers. You can't stand the Ravens. Amen to that, Phil, dude. Yeah, it's game day too. I guess I should have mentioned that off the bat. It's one of the biggest days of the year for us Steeler fans. Appreciate that. And then, yeah, dude, the questions you had, Bobby Mack in the wind, I love it. He's a great player in the wind. Dude, if you take a look at the shots gained metrics for Bobby Mack, there's a reason why I'm using him in Showdown today. There's a reason why he's like one of my core plays that I'm building around for this golf tournament. He gained on approach round 2, lost 2 strokes putting. You go to round number 1, he gained off the tee on approach, and then he lost 1.4 strokes putting. He can be a little inconsistent on the greens, no doubt about it. I mean, that's probably his main weakness, I'd say, over there in Robbie McIntyre's game. But in the wind, maybe he figures it out. And heck, if he even putts to a neutral, that's a really low round. So I like that for Bobby Mack. And then, yeah, Hideki and Sahith Lurkin, I think we're on the same page on a lot of this, Phil. I'm playing both of those guys in Showdown today. Hideki's just kind of been hanging around. He was really chalky out there for main slate now. No one wants to use him. And then Sahith, I mean, the stats they're not eye-popping for Sahith, but they were solid, especially round number 2. Round 2 gained off the tee and also gained on approach. In fact, it was a gainer across all 4 stat categories. Sorry, that was round number 1. I misspoke there. Round 2, you can see he still gained on approach, but gained in 3 out of the 4 stat categories. So, like I said, it's not the kind of stat profile that's going to make him super popular. That's going to make everyone want to go out there and click his name. But like Hideki, he's just kind of hanging around. And, Hideki and Sahith hanging around is, I think, a very scary prospect. Under 2.5 bogeys on Harman, still bogey-free this week. I love that. So if we're going to take a look at some of the stats for that, let me actually bring up the PGA Tour site so that I can give you guys the exact numbers. Brian Harman historically is a very good bogey avoider. He's, I believe, top 10% on the PGA Tour almost every single year. We won't guess, though. I'll give you guys the exact number. I know that this year was a little bit of a down year for him, which is kind of crazy to say, given that he's a major champion so recently. But let's bring this up here. So if we go through the averages from 2024, this is last year. We're not going to look at the one event sample size from this year. Brian Harman ranks number 74. So I would actually say that would be a down year for him, because if we go to before that, he was number 2 in 2022, 2023. Go to the year before that, he was number 26, so top 10% on tour. And then 2020, 2021, also top 30. And then the year before that, also number 17. So stat-wise, you're getting a prop on Brian Harman. That is usually something that he excels at. Avoiding bogeys, very solid short game. And very surprisingly, I brought this up on my Showdown stream. I did it on the Ship It Nation YouTube channel last night. But what you can see over here for Brian Harman in round 2 is that he gained off the tee, gained on approach. That's not that huge of a red flag. I mean, he's a pretty good ball striker when he's playing his best golf. But the huge red flag was the around the green play and the putting. He lost around the green with the putter, and that is unheard of for Brian Harman. You're talking about maybe the most stout short game player, the most consistent short game player that we have in all this field. Yeah, dude, Brian Harman, it feels like this round where he shot, what was it, even par, he had 3 birdies yesterday, shot -3. Could have been like a -6, -7 round. So yeah, keep an eye on Brian Harman. That under on bogeys could be the play. I think an under on strokes, I think he's 68 or 68.5 on a few books, could be in line as well. Is this really live, or is YouTube sending you notifications hours late? Yeah, it's live. It's normally we're going live at 1:30 a.m., but I'm glad to be up this morning. Good advice about Pendrith last stream. He didn't play well and still shot -4. Yeah, that's what happens when you get some putting regression, right? And just to show you why that happened, really good call, by the way, and saying he didn't even play that well. If you take a look at this, his approach play was into the negative, but he went from losing 3 strokes putting to gaining 1.7 strokes putting. And a lot of that is just luck. I mean, that's just how putting works. I can tell you in real life that I have a lot of putts I hit that are really good right on my line that end up missing. Taylor Pendrith just got more to drop over there yesterday. So, yeah, dude, if the thing is with Pendrith, if he goes back to doing what he did round one, like mashing it off the tee and then gains with the putter, I mean, what did he shoot yesterday? Was it like -6 or something like that? -4, what he ended up shooting for round number 2? I mean, that's like a -7 round. So, yeah, Pendrith, he's another one of those sleeping giants, I would say, that like the stat profile, it's not like Eric Cole where you're like, oh my God, like Eric Cole might win this thing. Also, another stat profile where you say like, oh my God, this guy might win this thing is look at JJ Spawn, guys. I mean, this is truly insane when you take a look at these stats for JJ Spawn. So off the tee, he gained yesterday. He gained 3.7 strokes on approach. Lost with the putter, whatever. He still had a really good day, right? Went out there, made a bunch of birdies. He had 5 on the day, only 1 bogey. Round one, you may say like, oh, like he couldn't have played as well. Nope, he gained 2.4 strokes on approach. Not quite the 3.7 that you had in round number 2, but he gained off the tee. And once again, was a slight negative with the putter. If you're looking for a guy who the stat models would just love, guy who's ball striking it, who's all that putting regression that can come, JJ Spawn's not a terrible play. And the reason I say that is, dude, he's going to get steamed up like crazy in Showdown today. That kind of stat profile. I mean, Eric Cole, too. You have somebody that's gaining all their strokes on approach, but then isn't really lighting it up with the putter. That's who all the stat nerds like to play. And I'm one of those stat nerds myself. I like to do so. But hey, I wanted to show you guys that with JJ Spawn because it is truly insane what he's been doing. Let's go through these pin locations. Enough dicking around, I guess, right? Let's go through this. So hole number 1's over here on the front right. If you bring up the slopes that we have here, a little bit of a backstop to this right side. Actually, where this 2 is a little bit in front of where that pin location is going to be. I would say it's about the same kind of pin location as what we had for round 2. The reason being is that you had that backstop to work with. It's maybe not as severe over here towards the right side, but it's a similar type of hole setup over there to the back left, and it's less protected by this bunker on the left. So I would say maybe slightly easier, actually, given that it's not protected by that greenside bunker. Hole number 2, let's bring up the slopes. It's going to be in this like middle left side of the green. So it does bring this left bunker into play if you end up pulling it, but it is further away from this bunker on the right. So I would say a neutral pin location, you're going to have a lot of room to work with. And because a lot of people are laying up on hole 2, just to show you guys the hole shape, it does have water way down the left. You can see the shot for Fishburne had 188 yards in. Now, part of this was because of the wind, which will be, at least I believe, in the same direction. Yeah, it will be in the same exact direction that we had for days 1 and 2. So you're going to have to hit a shot from probably 150, 160 yards, which might actually make this back pin location easier. And you may say like, oh, how could a back pin location be easier? If you're hitting a wedge, front pin locations are great. If you're at a front pin location, you can spin the ball back, which means to a front pin location, you can land it past the hole and you can spin it back. So if this was playing downwind, you would love this front pin location. But because it's playing into the wind, it's not as easy of a hole. I mean, to get it to this front pin location, you almost have to land it short of the green and hope that it bounces up, or end up hitting a very spinny shot and hope that it sits for you, which most of these players just can't pull off. That's why this like back middle pin location, I won't even call it a back, right? It's just like a middle left pin location is probably easier because if you landed on the green, let's say about pin high to where it was for round number 2, you can easily get it close to that pin location, which honestly, what was the birdie rate at hole 2? I don't think many people birdied that. I mean, look at that, 12% birdie rate. There was 1 eagle at hole number 2. I think that's going to go up with that kind of pin location. Just a lot more room to work with. Hole 3 is on this front right, which also is a shorter par 4. This one, I believe, plays downwind, by the way. So like the other hole plays into the wind, this one ends up playing a little bit downwind. And it is a front right pin location, which is probably the easiest that we would have here at hole number 3. The reason you'd say that is that it's not really protected by this front bunker. You have that little bit of room to the right to work with. And because it's downwind, right, instead of the into wind like the other hole, you're probably going to have a wedge into this green. So I think you can get it pretty close there. You have a little bit of a slope in the middle of the green too that I guess you could work it off of and try and get it closer to that pin location. But yeah, probably easier. So yeah, these look like moving day pins so far. Hole 4 is over here to the right side, over here towards the middle right. It's worth noting that in round number 2, they did keep the tee box up. So I mentioned that being a possibility that sometimes they just play this hole a little bit shorter. But if they move this tee box back, which honestly, given that they kept it up for the first few days, my intuition, my, I guess hunch is that they're probably going to move it back out here towards normal tee box. It is going to be a further up pin location though. So over here on this front right porch, you can see 7 from the side. So you do have quite a bit of room over there from the right side. And then it's 19 paces on. If I bring up the slopes here, we're looking at about like right here or something like that. So if you miss in the right bunker, I think you're going to have enough room to get up and down, whether it's the first or that second bunker over there on the right side. You miss on the left, you're going to have the whole green to work with. And I think it's going to be a little bit harder just because I'm assuming that they're going to move back that tee box. But if they don't, it would be a significantly easier pin location than what we had for round number 2. But once again, I see them moving it back. Hole number 5 is a middle left pin location. So it's over here just over this slope. So kind of like round number 2, it's a little bit tougher just because you have that false front. But unlike the pin for round 2, which was closer to this right side bunker, it's a little bit less protected over there on the left side. You can still pull it and hit it in that bunker on the left. But getting up and down from the short part of the screen or even over here to the left is a lot easier to that kind of pin location. So yeah, I would say neutral, but maybe easier. Hole 6 is over here on the right side. There is a bowl over here. So this is for sure an easy pin location. And by a bowl pin location, I mean that you've got slopes all around it. To the left, if you miss just 3 or 4 yards to the left, you're going to have a slope that takes you right next to the pin. If you miss long, you can see that sloping towards the back of the green, which is going to bring you back a little bit closer towards that pin. And then to the right, it's not as severe a slope as what you have on those other 2 sides. But even if you hit a draw, and let's say you started it a little bit too far right, and then you just catch the green, the slopes can help draw you a little bit closer to that hole as well. So hole 6 is for sure easier, no doubt about it. Here we go. So hole 7 is a front left pin location. This one is kind of tough to say. I would say that it could be tricky. You might see more bogeys at hole number 7 just because it brings this front left pin location a little bit more into play. But it's a shorter shot. I mean, it's going to be like 150 yards, maybe even 140, depending on where they exactly put this tee box. I would say neutral, just because I do think you're going to see more bogeys, but it's a shorter club, so you're going to see more birdies there as well. Hole 8 is a back left pin location. So this one looks pretty tough. So it's kind of close to where this 2 is actually over here in the overhead view. It's a little bit longer. It's less protected by this bunker. So round 2, you actually had a harder pin location than what you're going to have for today. It's still tough though, right? It's not as easy as if it was over here on the front right. If it was in the front right, it'd be playing closer to like 420 yards, so shorter club in, and you wouldn't have any of these bunkers or the rough over the back protecting it. But unlike round 2, if you hit it a little bit short, maybe just fat it or you hit it a little bit thin, you're not going to be in that bunker, which is a huge difference. I mean, that's a really deep bunker there too. Hole 9 is a middle right pin. By the way, this is like the easiest hole on all the PGA Tour. It's a 500-yard par 5, and you had people hitting 160-yard clubs into this green yesterday. And you can see over here, you had guys getting backspin. Now, that was for the 3rd shot, so obviously Fishburne had to lay up so he could hit a shot that would spin back like that. But with long irons, I think you're going to see an unbelievable amount of eagles today. It's downwind over here at hole number 9. So the fact that it's super windy is only going to help the players on hole number 9. It's not going to hurt them if it's playing downwind. And because it's in the back here, rather than having it just over a bunker, which is hard to get close to, if you're hitting something like an 8-iron, because it's here in the back middle and it's downwind, you're going to have all of this room to get it close to that pin location. And let's look at the eagle average. So the eagle average yesterday, was 7%. Round number 1, it was 6%. I think it's going to be 10% plus, maybe even like 12 to 15% over here for today. That's the kind of pin location that you're getting. I mean, when it's downwind and you get that kind of pin location, it is just way, way too easy. They should not have that kind of pin location on hole 9 at a 500-yard par 5. I mean, the scoring average might be below 4. Last year, I think the scoring average was like 4.1 on one of the days for that par 5. Just make it a par 4 at that point. Heck, change 13. 13, by the way, plays over a 4 average pretty much every single day. It's that long par 4 that they changed from a par 5. Why not change that back to a par 5 and make this one a par 4? That's what I would do at least. Let's see. Where are we at? You spotted a lot of 3 putts on the shot tracker. What is the reason for that? It might have been the pin locations, and partially it could have been the players too. Just, being lackadaisical, being a little bit too aggressive. But hole number 1, I noticed a lot of 3-putts yesterday. And we'll go back to hole 1 before we go to hole number 10 and round this off. It didn't really look like a 3-putt pin location. I mean, here, let me zoom out. Sorry, I zoomed in way too much right there. Sorry about that, guys. I mean, the slopes aren't crazy here, right? If anything, you've got the slope behind it. So you would think that guys coming from way across the green, like Fishburne yesterday, he did a good job, right? He hit it to 3 feet, 2 feet, 1 inches, and then went out there and made it. But you had a lot of people in hole 1 yesterday hitting it either way past the hole or way short and then 3-putting. So I noticed that too. I honestly don't have an answer for you, though. I don't know why they were all 3-putting. It's unfortunate for them. Hole 10 is a tough pin location, but there's something that might happen at hole 10 today. So we're going to have to see what they end up deciding to do. But they have it here in the back right, which is tough just like round 2. Round 2, which by the way played easier than round 1, which is kind of crazy. But in this back left pin location, there's a huge slope here that makes it really difficult to get up and down. And then you have the slope in front of the pin that also makes it tough to hit a wedge up there. Now, the huge thing that they could do today that would really change up this hole is if they move up the tee box, which they don't always do. But if they even move up the tee box just to the front of this last tee box, or God forbid, if they move it up to the tee box in front here, this would become a very, very easy hole. I mean, it'd be a birdie hole because everyone would be driving it up near the green. We'll have to see what they do historically. I think it's like every other year they've decided to move up the tee box at hole 10 at some point. So something that I'll be keeping an eye on as we get early into the round is whether they do that, because if not, it's probably going to play like it did yesterday. It actually played slightly over par in round number 2 because of that back pin location. But a lot of that just comes down to what they do with the setup. Hole 11 is in the back left. This is the hardest pin location that we have on this hole. So the front 9 looked really, really easy, but the back 9, at least for the first 2 holes, kind of looks tougher. So it's a longer shot in. If you pull it, you could be in this left bunker. And then if you miss short right or even just short, it could be a long putt with a lot of slope to deal with. So that's a harder one. Hole 12 is, what was that? Front right pin location. This is an easy one. Not really protected, shorter hole, kind of like round number 2. I don't want to say it's a lot easier than round 2, but it's also an easy pin location. For 13, it's over here in the middle left. So it's a 500-yard hole. It's not harder than round 2 just because it was already in the back for round 2, but it's also a tough one there in that back left corner. And it makes the drive really important there at 13, that's for sure. 14 is over here on the front right corner. This is a super easy pin location. I probably don't even have to say that much, right? It's in the front right. It's unprotected. That is going to be the easiest pin location that you get at that hole. 15 is going to be a back middle pin location. So it's a shorter hole. It's about right where my cursor is, hovering about that the back middle of the green. A little bit harder than rounds 1 and 2, but nothing too tricky, I would say. 16 is here in the front left. This is about the same kind of pin location as what we had for round 2. A lot of 16 really just comes down to the tee shot, though. You hit it in the fairway and it's a birdie hole. 17 is in the back right almost. Like you got this little side slope over there to the right side. I would say it's about the same kind of pin location as rounds 1 and 2. Round 1, by the way, was just a little bit shorter into the green, also tucked over here on the left side, about where my cursor is right now. This back pin location, you get a little bit more reprieve from this front bunker. It does make it easier to hit it closer to that pin location, but any miss to the right in those bunkers is absolute death. So kind of like some of the other par 3s that we've gone through, like the one that they made shorter with that front left pin location. I think it was hole 7 that we mentioned before. Hole 7, you're going to see more birdies at. I think that's the same thing here with 17. But I also think you might see more bogeys or more big numbers just because that miss to the right is so devilish. You don't want to miss there. And then finally, hole 18 is on this left side. It's just over the bunker. It's about the same as round 2. I mean, round 2, it was also tucked towards the bunker. So if you hit it in this left sand trap, it was kind of tough to get up and down. Let me see how much room you have over there. So you're going to have 14 paces on, but that's from the front of the green. Oh, so that's going to be tough to kind of like... I think you're going to have a decent amount of room over there on that left side. So it doesn't really look like it from this graphic, but if it's 14 paces on, I mean, yeah, you're going to have like 5 or 6 paces of room from that bunker to try and get it up and down. It's not going to be quite where this 3 is, but it's going to be like 1 or 2 paces down from where that 3 is right there. It's probably about the same. Usually I like to say that they're about the same if I don't know whether it's going to be easier or harder, but it's about the same kind of test as what you had for round 2. It's a left side pin location. So ideally, if you can hit a big draw into this green, you have a chance at hitting it close. then yeah, it's coming down to this bunker game for a lot of players. One thing I will say is if you do lay up in the fairway to the right, it might be a slightly harder chip shot than what you had to this front one, but I think the extra room out of that bunker may actually make it easier because you had a lot of guys that were hitting it like in this bunker against the upslope. Against the upslope to this pin, super easy. I mean, it's going to give you extra loft. It's going to give you an ability to stop it close to that pin. When they were hitting it up in this upslope and trying to hit it to this pin location, though, it's a little bit of a side slope, right? You're not hitting straight up that slope like you would be to the pin today. You're hitting a little bit on a downslope, which you guys know downslopes are hard to hit off of if you're a golfer out there. So yeah, actually, I'd say maybe an easier pin location, but hey, we're grasping for straws at that point. I think it looks pretty similar to what we're getting for today. All right, so that's it for the pins. In terms of scoring averages, just to tie it all together, I think that it's going to play a little bit easier than round number 2, which I know it sounds like a hot take, but you've got all those outliers getting out of there at the bottom end of the board. You've got some easy pin locations like we just saw going through that. And then the wind, it really doesn't look all that much worse than what you had for the first few days. I'm going to put the scoring average at 1.5 under par. That's going to be the median for it. I think it could be 1.25 under. If it was the exact same, I guess that wouldn't surprise me. But if it got to 2 strokes under par, I also wouldn't be that mind blown. So everything I said before about like a 3.75 to 4 birdie average, maybe like a 2.25 bogey average, seems pretty reasonable out there for tomorrow. Now that we've gone conditions down, we're going to look at some Underdog and Prize Picks stuff. So we've got Underdog up here. We've got Prize Picks. Underdog, by the way, just added some birdie or better lines. So we're going to have a little bit more selection to work with over there. And I was doing some deep diving over here on the Prize Picks board last night. So I've got a few ideas for what we can go through. We've got the boards up over here on Caesars, William Hill, and also Fanduel. And the beautiful thing is that Fanduel also has these props posted over here for birdies. So we're going to be able to compare these when it comes to some of those lines. And just look at this, like Hideki's minus 120 over for his birdies. Maybe we'll take a look at that a little bit later on, especially with some moving day pins. And we'll find some value for you guys over here on the board. But let me get a sip of coffee and see what we're doing. Hole 10 had a lot of 3 putts. So yeah, that's another hole. I didn't really notice all of them, but yeah, there was something with the pin locations. Do I like Glover today? So he's not really somebody that I'm like building around or anything like that. But if we take a look at the stat profile, I don't think he sets up terribly or anything. He's gaining off the tee, he's gaining on approach. It's kind of his MO. It's one of the best ball strikers that we have out here, but then losing with the putter. Round number 1, he actually gained with the putter. Round 2 is where you saw him go out there and lose. I think stat-wise that Lucas Glover, he looks like a good bounce-back candidate. Round number 2, I'm not quite sure what he shot. He shot 1 under par with the double bogey on hole number 13. I would say that he's a decent play. Like if I was ranking him out of 10, I'd probably put him at like a 6.5, 7 out of 10 because the stats for round 2 look like they could turn around. Golf season ain't the same without Scotty. That is true. But I kind of like it, Danny. It gives other people a chance to win. At an event like this, if Scotty Scheffler was playing, he'd probably be winning by 5 already. You missed how is the weather. So if you want to see my full take on it, the 4-minute mark, I made sure to keep a note of it this time. If you go back to 4 minutes and 30 seconds, 4 minutes, 20 seconds, something around there, you can get my exact thoughts on it, but it's pretty breezy. I'll just show you the 5 models. They're calling for like 20 miles an hour wind, but that's what we got yesterday as well. So it's not really out of the ordinary compared to what we've seen so far. And then we're pounding the over 0.5 Eagles then. Dude, some of these books, I forget what book it was, Hard Rock last year, used to post these 0.5 Eagle lines all the time. And there was one day where they had the under on Eagles for a group. I think it was at the Players Championship, which you make some Eagles around the Sawgrass course. I mean, you got some reachable par 5s, that sort of thing. But they had groups of 3 players at even money to make an Eagle. Now, the Eagle average for a player around the Sawgrass course, I think it was like 0.05 per round. So 3 players, that's less than like 15 to 20% equity they have to go out there and make an Eagle. And they had them at even money for the groups there in Hard Rock Bet, which they took them down. I mean, I absolutely massacred them that week on those kind of props. And then they took them back and haven't brought them back since. So if you can find some 0.5 Eagle props for me, let me know, dude, because those are some of my favorite things to go out there and attack. I usually look for the unders because the sports books don't know how to price them properly. But yeah, I do think there could be some Eagles today, though, at this golf course. Let's go through a few props here, though. So I was mentioning this green regulation average before, and I mentioned that we're probably going to circle back to it because it was 12.93 over here for round number 2. And then we've got guys posted here at 12.5 greens. Now, some of them are lower tier players, like an Adam Shank, you would kind of get it with. Like even a Harry Hall, he's not the best ball striker. Guys like Webb Simpson, etc. Like you kind of get why they're at 12.5. But why the hell is Patrick Fishburne at 12.5? Why the hell are guys like Rico Hoey at 12.5 greens? And why the hell is Keith Mitchell down here at 12.5 greens? And the reason why I say it like that, especially with Patrick Fishburne, is Patrick Fishburne last year was the #1 player in all of the PGA Tour when it came to hitting greens in regulation. So we go back to 2024. This is the entire calendar year. He hit 74.21% of his greens regulation, which is just ridiculous. I mean, it's like over 13 greens regulation per round. So at a golf course like this, where the average is about 13 per round, and he was averaging well above the tour average when it came to hitting greens regulation, like, why wouldn't we consider that kind of an over? So I was looking at the Fishburne before. The only issue I have with him is the nerves. I mean, he's the leader after 2 rounds. Is he going to feel that heading into moving day? But yeah, dude, these guys that are at 12.5, like, I just don't really get it. And just to show you guys some of the other guys that we had on this list, Rico Hoey is in the 20s. So he's actually, number 16 when it comes to green and regulation percentage. And then Keith Mitchell is number 23 on the PGA Tour when it comes to that category. So these 3 players, I mean, they're elite on the PGA Tour when it comes to hitting greens, let alone in a weaker field event like this, where you don't have the Scotty Schefflers, the Rorys, the Xanders all teeing it up. They're even better compared to your regular PGA Tour event. So I was looking at these 3. I'm not sure which one I'm going to take quite yet. I've actually not entered any slips for today at this point. I wanted to wait till this morning, and I had a little bit more energy to go out there and enter some slips. But these were the first 3 props I was looking at, because the strokes lines, there were a few that I thought you might want to take some unders on, particularly guys that had like push equity at 68 or 69 strokes, which we'll mention here in just a few minutes. But these felt like real mistakes. Like, I don't know. The only one I'm kind of sketched out about is Fishburne, just because of his positioning. But guys like Rico Hoey, Keith Mitchell that aren't going to be playing with that pressure, like especially Mitchell. I feel like Mitchell might be the best one. I know he was the lowest ranking out of those 3 down there at number 23, but he's also playing with 0 nerves. I mean, he just hardly made the cut. He can completely freewheel it over there for his round. I don't know, I might take all 3 of them. That might end up being the final verdict, but Keith Mitchell is probably my favorite out of the 3. The other thing I want to point out, this is the reason I didn't enter them for a slip already, because I really like the value that we see there, is if we take a look at how they've actually done this week, they've been some of the few players to not do well with green and regulation percentage. So for example, he hit 13 in round number 2, which is solid. That'd be over this sort of line. But in round number 1, he only hit 12 of his 18 greens. Now, what you'll notice over here to the right is that this is a 144 player field, in that he was T78 finishing at 12th out of 18th, right? So he would have gone under this line, but because he was T78, and this is just from round 1, guys, that means that there were 77 guys that hit 13 or more greens, right? That makes sense. If he's T78 and he hit 12, that means there's at least 77 that were hitting 13 greens, and there's only 144 players in the field. So what that means is that half the field was covering this 12.5 GIR line. And you're talking about before the cut line, you're talking at a weaker field event on guys that don't hit a whole lot of greens in regulation. And I know Fishburne was one of the guys to go under. Kind of surprising, to be honest, that he'd go under that sort of line. But when you have half the field, and it's a lot of shitty players that were getting to 13 greens regulation, you can see why I think these are so mispriced. So whether I'm going with Mitchell and Hoey, that might be what I end up doing just to get away from the pressure of a Patrick Fishburne. In fact, I think that's what we're going to do over here for the slip. So for the prize pick slip, we're going to take an over on Keith Mitchell, also an over on Rico Hoey for his greens regulation, just to get rid of that pressure. But yeah, hey, Patrick Fishburne might be another player that I get to a little bit later on, just because I think the averages are so far off from what we're going to see in reality. So that's it for prize picks for now. We're going to look at some of the stroke stuff and birdie or better stuff, but over on Underdog, just so I can give you guys a slip over there on each site. And it's pretty much the same projections, I think, across the board. There might be some 0.5 differences on a few cases, but it's going to give you guys a good idea how to attack that board on prize picks if that's the only site you're playing. And I guess it's worth noting the fairway board I thought was pretty accurate. I went through it last night. There wasn't really anyone out of those 7 that I wanted to play. And then these birdie or better matchups look like absolute crap too. So if there's anything that I'm going to play personally over here for round number 3, it's probably these green and regulation props. And then these birdie or better are strokes props over here in Underdog. And speaking of, let's go through that. So let me refresh this. They've been adding a few props here to Underdog this morning. So I want to make sure that we have everything to go through. Smalley, Martin, Harada, and Peterson are plus 110 and 20 for the over 3.5 birdies. Oof. So here's the issue with those 4 players. They're dog shit, right? Like Alex Smalley, Ben Martin, Kenzie Harada, Paul Peterson, they're lower tier players in this kind of field. Like I'll call a spade, right? Like they're not very good. At 3.5 birdies plus money, I don't think they're the worst bets, because if you're getting plus money for them to go over, like I think that's a fair line, but just know what you're getting yourself into, right? Like those kind of guys, would it surprise us at all if they completely fell off and got out of contention? I know for me, it absolutely wouldn't. So I would be a little hesitant on those just because of the quality of player that you have there. But out of principle, yeah, I think the birdie average is going to be around 3.75 to 4 per round. And that means if they have an average day, they can cover. So they're below average players, but you're getting that plus money. That's kind of why I think it's a fair line, if that makes sense. And then they do have the over-under Eagles at Bet365, but the unders are really squeezed. Yeah, so I think that's more so comes down to the pricing. If you can find a book that has the pricing wrong, then take advantage. Heck, hey, if they have it squeezed towards the under, you might want to look in an over at this kind of golf course. Spawn under 69 strokes. I was thinking about it. There are a few guys I'm going to look at here, Kim. So I'll show you the Spawn line, but there's a few other guys I have on there too. And the Keith Mitchell experience is like none other. Agree with that. Hey, he hit for me yesterday. I needed him to make 4 birdies, and he clutched up with his 4th birdie on his 18th hole. So yeah, dude, the sweats with Keith Mitchell or something else. 3.5 birdies. Yeah, the issue is the multiplier, right? So I would love to take this over on 3.5 birdies on Cole. The unfortunate part is that he's got this 0.8x multiplier, which if you correlate it at all with the others, slip you're taking, I mean, look at this. It's like a 2x payout. Like, no, thank you, right? I'm just not going to enter that over there for a single leg slip. That's the only issue I have with taking that kind of over, is that's going to completely screw your payout. Here are a few guys I was thinking about over here on Underdog, and this is going to sound terrible, but there are a few guys I want to play for unders on strokes that maybe aren't playing that well, but I just think are much better players than people realize. And I'm just going to throw a few of them into the shopping cart here. So we got Echeverria threw in there. We got Dunlop I threw in there. You guys know that I pretty much have a man crush on Nick Dunlop. He's one of my favorite players that we have in the world. I honestly think he's going to be a world top 3, top 5 someday. Let's see. So we got those 3 in there. Any other ones at 69 that I was looking at before? I thought they had a Kuchar lineup, but it looks like they may have taken that one off the board. He was going to be one of the guys at 69 strokes I was looking at for an under, just because of his consistency and his track record around this golf course. So yeah, I guess we can make it these 3 that we're choosing between. They're probably my favorite 3 that I had on the board. And they're also the guys that I used for the thumbnail. And here's the idea, guys. Echeverria, Dunlop, Spawn. Spawn has great shots gained metrics this week. But the main 2 I want to take here, and honestly, I think the 2 that I'm just going to play for the slip are, I don't want to call them gut leans for today because it just sounds wrong. It sounds shitty. But these are 2 players that I think are top 10 players in this field someday. Maybe not right now. Maybe right now it's closer to like top 25 in the field when it comes to their talent level. But if I think the scoring average is going to be 1.25 to 1.5 under par at like the very worst, I think it might even be slightly better than that over here from round number 3, then why the hell would I not take an under on guys that I think are top 25 players, right? If they can have a below average day, right? They could do a little bit worse than that 1.5 under par scoring average and still push this kind of line. There's a reality. If it plays to 1.5 under par, where they only have to gain like a half a stroke to the field to go over there and go under this sort of line with all that push equity that they have there at 69. And the reason I say that, like, it's kind of like a shitty play is, like, if you look at the shots gained metrics, you guys know that I'm always about looking at the stats. They're not the best plays on paper. Like, Dunlop has had a very pedestrian week. Echeverria as well. Like, he's just kind of been okay this week, gaining across all 4 stat categories. At least he's -7 to this point, right? He's got a good score up on the board. But these sort of plays at -1 just do not make sense to me. And we don't have lines to compare to, at least at 69 strokes. Dunlop's at 68.5, and he is juiced over. I'm not sure if they have an Echeverria lineup. In fact, they do. He's -145 for the over. So, like, compared to the sportsbook odds, which is a lot of what I like to do with my process, maybe not the best play. So that's maybe part of the reason I say it was shitty, but I disagree with that completely. Like, these are players that in my process, in my rankings, and all the analytics that I look at, how I rate players, are for me, they're top 10 players in this field. I know it's a hot take. Trust me. I know that is a spicy take to say that these two players are both top 10 players, but they are. Like, name 10 other players in this field that are better. Like Hideki, sure. Guys like Siwu that even missed the cut Poston. Like, I'll give you a few of those guys, like Sahith Theegala, even like Brian Harmon, Russell Henley. Like, I'll give you like those 5-6 players right there. But find another 5 to 10 players that are better than these two. I'll wait. You will not find them in this kind of field. So if you agree with that kind of take, you think that they're solid players, I think these make sense for an under. And then when you're getting that push equity, obviously at -1, that's part of the reason that you take them on a site over here like Underdog. And by the way, on Underdog, if one of those two were to push, the way it works in Underdog, which is actually advantageous to what they do on Prize Picks, is if one of those two pushes, you get a full refund back. And I'm not going to do the math with you guys here on live stream. You could just trust me on it or do it yourself. The math on getting a refund with the push is better long-term than doing what Prize Picks does. And if you know what Prize Picks does, they essentially like cut your payout in half. But if you're going to get that half payout, you have to hit the other prop that you're going with. And if you do the expected value math for that kind of thing, it's a pretty big difference actually over here in Underdog, making it a better to take those 2-man slips. And what I usually like to do with those 2-man slips is I like to take them with even number props on Underdog, just so I can take advantage of that aspect of their push policy. So that's a slip over there in Underdog that I took. Another one over there on the Prize Pick side. The Prize Pick side, a little bit more to the numbers, a little bit more traditional for what I like to do, right? Looking at the stats, looking at averages, that sort of thing. The Underdog play is more of a feel one. I already told you guys that, right? If you guys don't like field plays, you want more database plays, then obviously you can avoid it. You can fade the play if you wanted to. Heck, you obviously are the controller of your own destiny out there. But when it comes to this prop stuff, sometimes it doesn't always have to be an amazing play on paper. Sometimes you just bet on talent level, and that's kind of what I'm getting with these two players. So let me catch up on chat. We'll go through some like matchups and stuff like that as well. But outside of that, really, I'm just going to touch on any questions down in chat. Nick Taylor's been hot and cold. Driver seems shaky. What do I think about him? Let's look at the shots gained metrics. So he's played decently to this week. At least the score would indicate that he's had a decent enough week. So the shots gained metrics for Nick Taylor up here at the top. He's gained with the putter. He's gained around the green and on approach. I mean, it's not a half bad stat profile. But as you mentioned, off the tee, he's been a little bit hit or miss. Round number 1, he was a neutral off the tee, but round 2 had lost nearly a stroke. But the approach play was into the positive on both rounds. Round number 2, he was slightly into the positive with the putter, at least. I think is a pretty decent setup for him. I mean, golf course setup wise, you play him at shorter, more positional golf courses. We got it this week here at the Sony Open. And then you play him at courses where you hit a lot of wedges because he's pretty good with his wedges. I'm all for it, man. I think he's a decent play. Are you crazy for wanting to play an under 67.5 for Kim and Hideki? No, you're not. No, if I think it's going to play 1.5 -2 scoring average, asking those guys to gain 1, maybe 1.5 strokes to the field to go out there and cover is a very reasonable thing. And yeah, Hideki could nuke that. I'm playing him out there in DFS today. So I don't want a lot of people to hear this and go out there and do it themselves. But to this point of the week, he just has not made a putt. I mean, he's hitting the ball well. Off the tee, round 2 was pretty shitty. He lost about 2/3 of a stroke off the tee today, or yesterday, I should say. I don't know. Hey, if he figures it out off the tee, Hideki's going to go nuclear low. So I wouldn't talk you off of him. Shout out to your boy Woodland. Yeah, dude, nice round yesterday. Your guy Woodland, also from down here in the same town as me. So shout out to Delray Beach, Florida. And then Spawn Angle. I'll show you the Spawn stuff, bro. Look at JJ Spawn. If you're just joining us, maybe you saw this before. If you're just joining us, you didn't see this before. But if you were here before, I guess you already saw this. But look at the shots gained metrics for Mr. Spawn. 3.7 strokes on approach. That's ridiculous. Round number 1, 2.4 strokes on approach. If we just take a look at the event as a whole and look at his ball striking stats, he's gained 8.25 shots gained ball striking. That's like what you have for an whole event. And he's gone out there and done it in 2 rounds. I mean, if he replicates this over 4 days, like 16 strokes ball striking, it's not going to be like the best event ever, but it's going to be up there with like Scotty Scheffler's best performances ever on the PGA Tour. So I don't know what Spawn's doing this week, guys. In fact, there's almost 100% chance, by the way, that I'm taking a JJ Spawn under on strokes. But holy, like, what got into the guy? I mean, look at these stats. They're eye-opening. And actually, let's not even just look at JJ Spawn. Let's just look at the whole leaderboard as a whole. You have Eric Cole, who's also had a really good week. He's at 6 shots gained ball striking. Sepp Straka, too, having one of the best weeks of his career. Like, there's a reason why guys like Coles, Straka, Eric Cole are up there towards the top. JJ Spawn's gotten beat by at least two strokes in every single case. And when you get down here to Paul Peterson, he's beating Paul Peterson by 4 strokes ball striking. I mean, I cannot put into words properly how good he has been this week. So, yeah, I got to say, it feels like he might fall off a little bit, though, right? You're playing that well, it's got to come to an end at some point. That's the only negative I can possibly say about JJ Spawn, because stat-wise, he looks like Scotty Scheffler out there. There's really no other way to put it. He's playing unbelievably well. Let's look at a few other free balls. So if we're looking at free balls, I actually think JJ Spawn, this might be like the best place for us to go out there and try and attack him. So let's see what we have for our free balls. So let me actually just find the Spawn group. If they have anything posted for him, they do. So he's going against Henley and Garnett. I do have to say that Henley, good course history, but I would never bet a 3-ball at minus money. Garnett has had a pretty decent week as well. If you take it, his shots gained metrics, he's gaining off the team, gaining on approach. But JJ Spawn is the best out of all 3 of them. So if I was going to bet this 3-ball and plus 200, he's probably a little bit better odds over here on Fanduel. That's usually what ends up being the case. So let's look at that. So JJ Spawn is plus 210 over here in Fanduel. Yep, I'm going to bet that. That's for sure. Let me see what they have on Hard Rock Bet. I obviously only have access to the books down here in Florida. And if they have JJ Spawn at anywhere close to this plus 210, I'm probably going to add it right now. So let's do it together here real quick. Why not? There's the matchups. There are the free balls. And now where's JJ Spawn? I wish they had a search function over here on this site, but they don't. He's plus 210. So, yeah, we're getting the best odds available, actually, over here on Hard Rock Bet. So, we'll put in a little 1-unit bet on that, which at plus 210 is actually a pretty sizable wager. The reason why I'm willing to do that is just because of how good those shots gained metrics were. So, that'll be the first 3-ball that we go through. Let's also look at Eric Cole's group. So Eric Cole also hitting the ball beautifully. He's going up against Zach Johnson and Paul Peterson. Oh my God. That's like the biggest cupcake group ever. Like Paul Peterson, no offense, like just not it. And then Zach Johnson's an old washed up individual. Let's see what we can get on Eric Cole. If I can get plus 125 on him, like we got there, I'll probably bet that too. It'll probably be a half-unit bet just because it's a little bit less of a lean than what I liked over there on the Spawn one, but let's see what we have. Once again, the search function, if you're watching this Hard Rock Bet, or if anyone that has anyone affiliated to Hard Rock Bet close to them, let them know we want a search function over here on this site. It would make things a whole lot easier. So Eric Cole's also at plus 125. So yeah, I'm going to put a half-unit bet over there on Eric Cole at plus 125. So those would be the 2 3 balls that I'm taking for right now. Let's see if there's anything else. So I'm looking at the ball strikers. Like, I guess we could look at Sepp's group. Ben Coles. Actually, I kind of like the idea of a Ben Coles 3-ball. Let's see. Because it feels like we get some good odds on Ben Coles. You know, if it doesn't feel like they're going to give us like plus 100 or anything like that. Where is he? I can't even find him on here. So they might not have the Ben Coles group posted, is what it seems like, unless it's just not coming up on my Control F. So let me go through it one last time just to make sure I'm not overlooking it. Yeah, so it doesn't look like we're going to have anything posted for Ben Coles. So yeah, maybe not the 3-ball that we can look at. But who was the other one? We look at Ben Coles, Straka. Look at that. Paul Peterson's ball striking, by the way. I know I just talked shit about him. Maybe I shouldn't. He's getting 4 strokes on approach this week. I don't know. I usually have a hard time thinking that these new guys on the block are going to keep it going for an entire event. But hey, I'm willing to be proven wrong. That's for damn sure. So put some respect on Paul Peterson's name. I'll say he's playing a lot better than I was giving him credit for. But let's look at Sepp Straka. Let's see what he has for one of these 3 balls. So Sepp is plus 120 going against Hodges and Smalley. Smalley doesn't scare me at all. He's a very inconsistent player. If he has a really good day, he's going to win, but he doesn't have those all that often. And then Lee Hodges plus 185. Is it bad that I want to fade Lee Hodges after seeing him on the broadcast yesterday? He was one of the worst hosts that they've had on there in quite some time. And I'm not trying to be like mean to him, but You can tell that he doesn't really have a future in golf broadcasting. That's for damn sure. I can only get plus 190 on Hodges myself, but I'm also going to put oh, I just bet the wrong one. Good thing I can cash that out. Not Lee Hodges that I'm betting. Sepp Straka, I'm betting at plus 130. So yeah, we'll be taking that at plus 130. It's a little bit better odds than what you can get over there on DraftKings. And yeah, let me cash that out real quick. My bad. What the fuck is going on? All right. Yeah, $50 and at plus 130 for a little bit over $100. So that's what we're going to do out there for that component. From the free ball perspective, obviously do your line shopping, try and find the best lines available. But what I've noticed out here with these three ball markets is that FanDuel almost always has the best possible lines. Sometimes Caesars will have them beat in like 1 or 2 spots. Like this, like Sepp Straka's plus 125. You can get plus 130 over here on FanDuel. Just always make sure you're getting the best line available. I know it's a small difference when it comes to your payout, but long-term, it is going to have a pretty drastic impact on your results. So that's all I've got here for the prop live stream though, guys. If you have any last-second questions, I'll go through them. But that's all I really wanted to talk about out here for moving day. Coles minus 110 over Smalley. Yes, 100%. I would take that. Smalley doesn't scare me at all. Very inconsistent player, very low floor player. And Ben Coles, with how he's been striking it, is a very high floor player. So I'm all for that, Kim. I think that's a great bet. All right, guys, that's all I've got for the live stream, though. Go ahead, smash that like button if you haven't already. Also, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the content to come. And make sure to check out my Patreon page if you want all the slips that I'm entering for round 3. That'll be all the stuff on Underdog and Prize Picks. I'll be posting over there for my prop members, as well as all the showdown content for round 3 as well. If you guys want to go out there, try and take down a GPP or two, make sure to join my Patreon page, link in the description of this video, for all my projections and all my player pool for moving day. Yesterday ended up being about a 10x day on the showdown side for me, so I more than paid for the entire week, so which is pretty sweet. You know, you're playing with house money for the rest of the week. It makes things a little bit less stressful. So over there on the showdown side, for all those projections, check out the Patreon page for that. And for all the exposure I'm getting to for round 3 on the prop side, you can find it over there on the Patreon page as well. That's all I've got, guys. Hopefully we can make moving day a good one, and let's get it.